We are live at the voice of college football for Missouri Live as we let people kind of power in here. Okay. Put my headphone in just so I can hear what I'm saying. Alrighty, folks. Welcome to Missouri Live, the 6th edition. I'm your host, Zach Rebellious. We're going to talk all things Missouri Tigers and my 50-pound weight loss. I'm just kidding. We're not going to talk about that. No one wants to hear about that. I'm just proud of myself for once. So, Mizzou gets a quarterback. After my ranting and raving last week about how bad Eli is at getting a quarterback in the portal, Mizzou picks up one. Last night, it was announced that Bo, I believe it's Pribula. Or is it? I believe that's the emphasis. No one can quite, because even on broadcast, it's like, oh, it's Pribula. Oh, it's Pribula. I think it's Pribula. Announced he's committing to the Missouri Tigers. Missouri beats out Iowa for him. Thanks, man. I've been working my butt off since Halloween. They beat out the Iowa Hawkeyes for his services. He will be the starting quarterback at Mizzou next year, more than likely. I mean, there's always a chance Sam Horn comes in and wins the job in the spring. Won't be Drew Pine. There's always a chance of that happening, but with Horn playing baseball and then the spring portal, I don't know. I think it's going to be our boy, Bo Pribula. I'm going to probably mispronounce his name 100 times. So how does this happen? How does Mizzou get him? Well, he enters the portal, and very quickly we kind of learn Mizzou's going to be interested. I was little about it because, and I still am. I'll get into my full thoughts now that Missouri has a quarterback. But rumored like UCF was interested, Indiana was going to be interested, Iowa was going to be interested, and Missouri was going to be interested. I was like, okay, like he's not really a proven quarterback. Obviously there's some things there's some really intriguing things there with his toolbox, but I was a little interested by it, and then a lot of Penn State people have come out and been like, "This dude is the man. He's a great worker." He signed to Penn State the same year as Drew Allar. Penn State's his dream school, so this wasn't an easy decision for him. And he comes in, he sits for a few years, he works his tail off. Everyone around the Penn State program, it seems like they've gone out of their way to kind of tell you how great this kid is, which is something you want to see. And Mizzou, he gets a visit to Mizzou. Do you know Mizzou? They're going to have a field day with him. It's going to be great. But Mizzou gets a visit, and after they lose out on Miller Moss, it's very obvious, okay, this is a serious target. We also know that Mizzou was in on Mendoza from Cal. Now, from what I've read, and this is coming from a couple different places, one of them being Power Mizzou, another one being just some other message boards, but I'm going to shout out Power Mizzou here because Gabe and that team does some really good work. And I've heard this from a couple people. I used to help run an SB Nation site, man. I got some people. I know some people. But from what I understand, a couple teams have kind of entered the Mendoza sweepstakes. So some people think it's Georgia, some think it's Miami. A lot of people think Indiana's kind of the favorite here, but there's other teams that are going to hop in. It's going to make Mendoza a bidding war, which is deserved. He's an awesome quarterback, put up good numbers at Cal with Cal talent, and good on Justin Wilcox for somehow getting that team to a bowl game every year. He's a good coach. And Mizzou didn't want to get into a bidding war. They're like, okay, we like Pribula enough, or Pribula or whatever. We like Bo enough that we're just going to bring him in. He's going to be our guy. They pulled the trigger. They met. According to On3, it's like a $1.5 million NIL. Boy, is it fun to talk about things like you're talking about hockey contracts. It's a $1.5 million NIL package. He has 2 years left to be eligible, so it kind of builds your path into Matt Zollers. And I kind of think I think Mizzou really wanted Mendoza, but when they kind of heard about how much harder it is going to get Mendoza, they thought, all right, we like this Bo kid enough. Let's bring him in. He'll be our starter more than likely going into next year. I'm just keep calling him Bo. Bo's so much fun to say. But what does Bo bring to the table? Elite runner with the football. Mizzou has had quarterbacks that could run the football. Brady Cook wasn't immobile. I think we kind of mislabel Brady Cook's running ability. He was a tough runner, but he wasn't somebody who was going to go pick up 45 yards on a scramble. He was elusive enough and he was mobile enough. Connor Bazelak, after his knee injury, could not move. Who else did Mizzou? Kelly Bryant was a runner. He was a great runner with the football. And then he came to Mizzou wanting to be an NFL quarterback. Fair enough. And Derek Dooley said, okay, well, we'll just make you into a drop-back passer. And early on, it had some very good results. And at the end, it very much did not. So, and he had an injury in there. So, is what it is. Before that, Drew Lock, not a runner. Matty Mock, kind of the same thing as Cook, kind of a tougher runner. And then Franklin. This is he's the first real running quarterback they've had since James Franklin. And Franklin could outrun you. He could power through you. It'll be interesting. If you just look at his numbers rushing the football, this year he had 38 carries, 242 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He was legitimately a part of the Penn State offense. He wasn't some scrub that was getting crap snaps. He didn't throw the ball a lot, and we'll get to that. But he was getting snaps. He was a part of the offense that is now into the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. Obviously, he didn't play against SMU. But he was getting a few carries a game. He had 4 touchdowns. But throwing the football, we're going to have to wait and see. And we'll talk about that here in a second, and what Mizzou might do offensively with this kid. Matty could run a little bit. Yeah, he never ran enough to me, to be honest. Brad Smith, James Franklin, yeah. Kelly Bryant could have been, but Derek Dooley and Kelly Bryant decided that we're not going to run the ball with you, which didn't really work out. 6-6 with the worst. People clowned Mizzou schedule this year. That 2019, if you get best Mizzou team, that 2019 Mizzou schedule, they're going 11-1. No issues. That schedule was a joke, and you went 6-6. Not to rant about 2019 Missouri football, but my God, Wyoming, Ole Miss when they were really down. Arkansas had Chad Morris. You still had to go to Georgia. You would have lost that one. But first year, Dan Mullen, Florida, which was good but not great. Tennessee and Pruitt ears, oh my God, that schedule was a joke. And you went 6-6. But yeah, he had 6 touchdowns this year. I believe I said 4 earlier. College Football Reference disorganized for me for some reason. He was a part of their offense, and it'll be fun to see what he does moving forward. Oh, no, he was only 4. For Mizzou moving forward. Don't remind me. Don't remind me of that game. Ooh, that game. But throwing the football largely unproven as all get out. His first year, 11 for 21 for 52 yards and 149, or 52% completion for 149 yards, 4 touchdowns. This year, 26-35, 275, and 5 touchdowns. Did throw it a little bit more this year, and there were some games he had to come in and actually play. At Wisconsin, he came in, was 11 for 13 for 98 yards and a touchdown. That's a positive performance throwing the football. Other than that, at Purdue, he came in, 5 for 8 for 62 yards. Got some run against Maryland. Season high of rushing was 56 yards against Purdue. Had a 45-yard game against Penn State, or Kent State, excuse me. He played for Penn State, moron. Largely unproven throwing the football, which is what we're going to talk about now. Yeah, I thought he was great. Very good in that game. Considering the situation and all that, no, he was awesome. Throwing the football, you watch him throw, there's some work that needs to be done. I think he has a livelier arm than Cook. I think he's got a little more oomph to his throws than Brady Cook does. I think Cook was obviously more accurate. Brady did a really nice job of, even when he was bad in 2022, he usually threw it. He usually did an okay job of avoiding turnovers or just awful throws where you're like, where are you looking? Now, not all the time, but he just wasn't accurate enough to make the throw or had a good enough arm. And that some of that was that shoulder injury in 2022. We don't know how this kid's going to do on a down-to-down basis as a starting quarterback. He came in, he basically was a wildcat quarterback at Penn State. We don't know what he's going to look like when it's 3rd and 6. You got to drop back to pass. You're in Norman down 4 points. Like, we don't know how he's going to look. And we're not going to know. Here's the thing about college football now. We're not going to know for 8 months. So there's going to be a lot of time to talk yourself into it and talk yourself out of it. And back and forth. And spring ball, we'll see. You're going to hear reports out of camp. Like, we have a lot of time before he plays they play Central Arkansas. My hair is awful. And then he plays, and then we got Kansas. So that second week of the season is when we're going to find out if this kid can throw the football and lead to Mizzou to a successful season. And until then, we'll see. I mean, I'm pretty confident the running attack is going to be good. We'll get more into Hardy and the pickup they made at running back the other day. But I think the running game is going to be pretty good if their offensive line holds up. There's some issues I have with the offensive line. We can get into all that when we talk more about portal additions. But just speaking of Bo, the other concern with me in the pass game, I think Kevin Coleman's a pretty good receiver. Outside of Kevin Coleman, it's a lot of unproven. It's Josh Manning. It's Marquise Johnson, who had a great freshman year. Outstanding freshman year at Mizzou. Didn't really do anything last year. Had one big catch against Mississippi State. You'll have Brett Norfleet, who probably needs to be way more involved in the offense. It is going to be interesting to see how they form a pass game with these targets. Yeah, Kevin Coleman, Marquise Johnson, Brett Norfleet, Josh Manning, Daniel Blood. James Madison's going to have to get some snaps. Courtney Crutchfield left. He was probably going to get some snaps, but a couple of the kids they got this year, like Tron Terry, they're going to play. Like, they're talented kids. So it's a lot of unproven. It's talented. It's a really talented room. Like, all these kids except Johnson are 4 stars or 5 stars. Actually, I don't think Daniel Blood was a 4-star, but even like the kids that are behind, and I'm talking about James Madison, they're very highly thought of kids. It's talented, but it takes time it's just unproven. And I know people are like, oh, we'll go get another receiver in the portal. It's like, guys, at some point you got to play your recruits. Mizzou can't be a transfer portal program. It's just not a sexy enough school. You can't be Ole Miss. It's just not going to happen. You don't have Lane Kiffin, who does he's a better seller than Drink is. Drink might be a better coach. We'll find out in due time. But at this juncture, like, you can't be a portal team year in, year out and expect results. Like, you got to play the kids you recruit. There's been some smoke around Kirby Moore and the Washington State job. That is interesting to me. I don't think I would be too upset if he took the Washington State job. Whereas after last year, I would have been bawling. But if it remains, like, there's smoke, there's fire, but we don't know yet. I am curious how he forms this offense. Because the answer I think a lot of people have is just RPO. The issue you have with that is in 2018, Alabama, that's all Alabama did was run RPO. When Mike Locksley was their coordinator, they had Tua and Jalen Waddle and they had Devontae, and they had Henry Ruggs, and I'm missing somebody, Jerry Jeudy. And that's all they would do, is they just RPO you to death. In that national championship game, Brent Venables kind of figured it out and shut them down. And slowly since then, you're seeing teams kind of be able to take away your RPO action. You can still run it, but as far as it being like your main source of offense, it's gone away almost. It's come a long way away from what it was. Teams have started to figure it out. Now you need dudes to stop it. Like, it doesn't matter how smart the defensive coordinator at Akron is. Like, if George is running RPO action, odds are they're probably not going to stop it. But I don't think Bo is going to have to be able to drop back and throw the ball. He's just going to have to if Mizzou's going to be successful next year. And they have a schedule where you can keep this thing going. And what I do like of it is it sets up your succession plan. Now, this is college football. Things happen. Matt Zollers might not be a Tiger in 5 months, let alone 2 years. But I do like the idea of, okay, you go from Bo, who and Zollers are friends. Apparently, they share the same agent. And he's coming off a pretty severe ankle injury, so he's basically going to redshirt. And now you have 3 quarterbacks, potentially. We'll see what Sam Horn does. If I wouldn't be stunned if Horn goes to baseball only or transfers. Like, I wouldn't be stunned. I'm not giving like any insider information. I just wouldn't be just like thinking things out in my head. I wouldn't be shocked about that. I think there's a chance Mizzou in the spring portal looks for another quarterback, like someone from the lower ranks who has played snaps, who could be like kind of like J.R. Blood, like just so they have quarterbacks, because right now you have 4. And 2 of them are coming off pretty severe injuries. Like for like spring ball, like you got to be able to run practice. I mean, there's stories out of OU that Michael Hawkins is running first team and second team because they just don't have any quarterbacks. But you do, and then you lead into Zollers 2 years if Bo stays for both years. I think that's interesting. I think that's a good decision. Read option will be there. Short passing game, QB run game. It's all going to be there. He has a decent arm. Like, I don't know if he knows where it's going all the time. But no, Mizzou. So Mizzou has their quarterback for the next probably 2 years. Super excited about it. I'm really intrigued. There were some names out there that I was like, really? Like, I don't know. I got an alfalfa hair right now. It's still there. What are you doing? I'm really intrigued by his skill set. I think that's the word I'll use. I'm optimistic. I choose to be optimistic about Missouri football because if you show me you have a plan and are following through on your plan, unlike the Blues and the Cardinals. The Blues, I'll give some credit. I'm sorry. David knows what I'm saying. But the Blues, I'll back off on. I'm mostly talking about the Cardinals, who I have learned to not stand. But if you have a plan and you show that plan, I am willing to be optimistic. And I'm optimistic about this. We'll see what happens. We'll see. I can see a world where he's a very successful quarterback at Missouri. But we also do have to take into account he's been a backup for a couple years now to a very good college quarterback in Drew Allar. He was going to be a backup next year at a pretty good program. He is a 3-star kid. He's not some superstar prospect that just had to sit. So I have tempered expectations, but I'm optimistic that there is a path for this to really work out. It wouldn't shock me if he turns out to be better than Brady Cook. It wouldn't shock me if he turns out to be worse. I think they're betting on ceiling here. And I think the ceiling with this kid and his toolbox is pretty high. But it's just going to take coaching. It's going to take the wide receivers being better. Or not better, but the wide receivers being as advertised when it comes to like your recruiting rankings. But that's what it takes for a lot of quarterbacks. So I'm I like the pickup. He was like 247's 12th rated, highest rated quarterback. That's fine. He's a backup. He didn't play. The fact that he was 12th actually speaks to a lot of people's thought process behind his potential. I'm cautiously optimistic. We'll see what happens. We have 4 months until we see him play in the spring game, and we have 8 months before we see him play an actual football game, which is the fun thing about the portal. It's like basketball. The portal's over in like June, so you really only have like 4 months to kind of sit around and plan out your team. Closer to like 4.5. We're in football, man. We got like there's people like you're going to be starting your fall semester or your next year of college before we know. So, but Mizzou gets a quarterback. It's kind of what we were all waiting on. Good job by Eli. As we keep talking here on Missouri Live, I'm Zach Remilius. We just spent 20 minutes talking about our boy Bo. And now we'll move on to some of the other additions. It was been a busy week for Mizzou. Just been kind of waiting on the quarterback. He's the big one. But they also announced a couple of linemen in Keegan Trost and Dominic Guidance. Again, only ever seen it read. So Mizzou, I think, is locked in to Tollison and Caden Green as starters. Trost probably will come in and need to be a starter. He comes from Wake Forest. I've seen his like PFF numbers. I can't accurately tell you what it all means. I think Brandon Jones has generally done a good job as Missouri's O-line coach. In the last couple of years, you've seen a real improvement. But it's just you're just gonna have to see these kids play. Aiden's the kid Dominic from Michigan. I don't know. Like he's really small. Like I was reading a thing. He topped out at like 270. And if he's gonna play guard, is he like center insurance if Tollison's not ready for the beginning of the year? Maybe. But I don't think he could be one of your starters. I think they're still hunting in the portal pretty heavily, and they missed out on Dewberry, who from Texas A&M. He ended up committing to Alabama. But like you got to hope that Javon Richardson or Logan Reichert are ready to go next year, because if they're not, all those things I said about your offense next year in the run game, we'll see. Speaking of the run game, they did add Ahmad Hardy. I was a little shocked they added a running back. And it led to Kwan Lacey entering the portal, or he had entered the portal. It just seems like Tavoris Jones is not going to get a chance at the University of Missouri. There's just something he does not do, and apparently it's pass blocking, where he's just not going to get a chance. So your running backs next year are going to be Hardy's going to be your starter. Jamal Roberts is going to get a lot of snaps. And then, will the freshman get snaps? Is Jones actually going to get some third string snaps? Who knows? But Hardy was good last year. 237 as a true freshman, 237 carries, 1,351 yards, 13 touchdowns. Not really a pass catching threat. Like half of his pass yards came on one play. But he is a good football player. He's a tough-nosed kid. And Eli, we know what Eli wants to do on his offense. It doesn't matter who the offensive coordinator is. If Kirby takes a Washington State job, whoever, he is going to run outside zone. That's just what's going to happen. That's what he wants. He wants that outside zone scheme. He wants to get you into gaps and trust your vision. Hardy apparently ran a lot of zone at Louisiana Monroe. I'm not going to pretend I know what Louisiana Monroe was running. I know Brian Vincent did a hell of a job this year, and I know he just got an extension, so good for him. But it's a good pickup at running back, man. Like, can actually run a real QB power. Dear God, if there was So a couple people in the chat that I'm in with David here, I don't think they understand quite what we mean by QB power. I think they like every time Brady Cook would run the ball, they'd be like, "Oh, QB power," and I'm like, "That's not QB power. Like that's a different play." It didn't work because Brady Cook's just not a good like straight ahead runner. Unless there's that action with the toss sweep, like you'll see that a lot, I'm sure. But Roberts will be the third down back. Probably, unless it's like a run situation. I don't know. I like Jamal Roberts. He might not ever. He's never going to be the starter at Missouri, but I like him. Where was I? Oh yeah, Hardy. Like he ran a lot of zone at Louisiana Monroe, so we'll see what happens here. Elsewhere, they got a punter from Stanford. Cool. Like their punting sucked this year, so that's cool. Connor Wesselman. We talked about Gabayer last week. Did we talk about Trotter last week? I don't remember. They got a commitment from Langdon Kitchen from Northwest Missouri State. He had a lot of offers from like some Big Ten school like Iowa, Wisconsin. He'll provide some good depth. They also got Nate Johnson from App State. The App State pipeline continues. Interesting player. His freshman year, 7.5 sacks and was a terror in the Sun Belt. Last year, really slowed down. He's only 240, but I don't think he's going to be coming in expected to start. If you all will remind yourself of the 2023 Missouri Tigers, I think he is more of a DJ Coleman who came from Jacksonville State, I think is where he transferred from. And he didn't start. He played behind Isaiah McGuire and Drazen Jeffcoat and some other guys. But yeah, he had 7.5 sacks. He was really good. And then last year, just 2.5. I don't know if like injury had stuff to do with that, but he will be like a third down pass rushing type. So now at D end, you have him. You have Darius Smith coming back, who, if you believe what the Missouri coaching staff was telling you all offseason, might be your best pass rusher. You still have Zion Young, Ja'Kai Lang showed some flashes last year. Eddie Kelly's still there. Like I think at DN now, you have some pieces where that could be a very good position group. Despite the loss of Nwaneri, like just even despite that loss, I still think that is a chance to, and Jaylen Brown, to be a pretty good position group. Still worried about D tackle. Right now, that rotation is Sterling Webb, who did not impress me at all. Again, a year one from New Mexico State, like that's not surprising. But Jalen Marshall, who just unproven, Marquise Graciel, who had moments last year, but I don't think anybody was that impressed. And then Chris McClellan, who was awesome. So I still think they need to maybe look at a D tackle. I know I argued earlier that like you sometimes just need to let your recruits play. So if they do that, I guess I can't really be too mad. But man, like, do they need some help at that position? At linebacker, they add Jeremiah Trotter, who was the Big 12 freshman of the year, or Josiah Trotter. Jeremiah is his dad. Talented player. They now, I think, have a pretty decent linebacking core, and with the NCAA's ruling about JUCO and NAIAs, you might see Tristan Newsom come back for a year. I'm not sure how that all works. Again, with my job and all this other stuff, I don't see everything. But if he could come back, like a 5-man of him, Trotter, Mackay, Beasley, and Jacobs with Nicholas Rodriguez and stuff waiting in the wings, like that's a pretty damn good linebacking core. That's pretty damn good. And then in the secondary, we talked about Santana Banner last week, and they brought in another safety. They brought in Mose Phillips, transfer from Virginia Tech. Solid player. I think he kind of takes in over the Joseph Charleston role. And he's pretty similar player to Charleston. Made some plays in the SEC, had a pick this year, 65 total tackles, had 1 interception, 34 solo tackles. I think Mizzou still needs to go on the hunt in secondary. I think they need another corner. I think they probably still do need another safety. I don't think you're relying on Santana Banner to start this year. Yeah, you could really, really, really use another safety. And probably another corner, probably another D tackle. Still plenty of time, and we still got the spring portal. You've knocked the big ones out of the way. You got the quarterback out of the way. You still need O-line. You still probably need a D tackle. You need a corner and a safety. But you knocked out quarterback. You knocked out receiver because it turns out you did need one. And, yeah, I mean, otherwise, no complaints. After panicking last week, Missouri's up to like 6th or 7th in 247's transfer portal rankings. So good on you, Eli. Yeah, after the after the contact yards, he was like 2nd in the country behind Ashton Jeanty. He's a good player. I'm excited to watch him in a Missouri uniform. We'll talk about the losses as you were listening to Missouri Live here at the Voice of College Football. We want to thank Mark Rogers for letting us do this still, despite being me and being a goofball. You can catch all our shows on audio podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, however you listen. I listen on YouTube because I'm just classic me. There's also Mark's Call-In show Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 11 Eastern, and then Saturday post-game late, even though games are kind of over now, except for we're into bowl season. We're into playoff season. I will not be here next week. It's a bad thing. Celebrating my grandfather's 95th birthday and the Mizzou Bowl games at 1:30, and I work. So that's unfortunate. But going into the losses, I mean, the big loss from last week, Courtney Crutchfield probably going back home to Arkansas. Is what it is, man. Portal giveth, portal taketh away. Eli's made the statement. He's going for production over potential, which I don't disagree with completely. But I do think you still do have to build out from the high school ranks. You just have to. I mean, your high school recruiting has to be good. If it depends what your goals are. Are your goals to win a national championship at Missouri? I don't know if they should be. Like, I want to talk about ESPN here in a little bit, but we've made the switch in this sport about 10 years ago that all that matters is the national championship. That's not all that should matter. Seasons like last year for Mizzou are what makes college football season special, not the national championship. One of the least fun things about college football, and now that's all that matters. And I don't know if they ever do, please come back to this video and tell me to shut up. But I just don't see Mizzou being a national championship caliber program within the next 10 years. But if you do want to get to that level, you have to recruit high school talent. You just do. And sometimes that high school talent's going to transfer away. Courtney Crutchfield would have gotten some snaps next year. Really talented kid. He's probably heading back home to Arkansas. It was a big win for Eli in recruiting last year, and now he's going to go, and best of luck to him. He's a super talented kid. They lose Aiden Glover, who signed with them last year. He was the quarterback for their 2024 class. He was never going to start. He just wasn't. I don't blame him. Playoff team, every recruiting class is probably where I would say Mizzou's at. And we'll talk about this. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit because I do have some thoughts that I just want to get out into the atmosphere. But, yeah, every 3 to 4 years maybe, Mizzou should be a playoff team, which is better than been for the last decade, which is once every 10 years. You have a team that potentially qualify for that. But Aiden Glover, he was just never going to play. They obviously were on the hunt for a quarterback. They brought in Matt Zollers, who they've basically laid out the red carpet for to be the starter in 2027, 2026. Let's see what happens this year. He was just never going to start. Him transferring is not surprising. He wasn't their first option. They wanted Daniel Kalen, who committed to Nebraska. Before Nebraska got Raiola. So we'll see. I'm not surprised by that one. None of the other transfers have really surprised me. Punter Orion Phillips committed to Utah. Neonari committed to Wisconsin. Jalen Brown committed to South Carolina. That sucks. That kid, I mean, you're Jaylen Brown, man, and you're trying to make the NFL. I don't love that you transfer from Missouri, but if you're going to go anywhere, playing opposite Dylan Stewart's not a bad idea. Like that dude's going to get some attention. Kwan Lacey was in the portal for all of about 15 minutes before he transferred to Ole Miss, who this is also why high school recruiting is going to be important. Mizzou got him over Ole Miss in high school recruiting. Ole Miss finished second. And it was a stunt. I think multiple people had put in like crystal balls for him to go to Ole Miss or whatever. And he picks Missouri. And now a year later, he wants to go back in the portal and Ole Miss is there for the taking. This is why high school recruiting is still important. Because just because you miss on a kid in this Wild West era, just because you miss on a kid, that doesn't mean he's gone forever. Because the odds are you can lure him into the portal. There's no rules right now. There needs to be. I'm not going to get into all that. We have 8 months of talking points to get to. I'm here all year, guys. We have 8 months of things to talk about. But in this Wild West era, you do need to keep recruiting. Because just because you weren't their first choice doesn't mean you won't be their second choice when it's time to enter the portal. But that's really all the losses that I want to. I mean, I talked about the Brown and Newaneri stuff last week. I don't really feel like getting into it anymore. Because what more could I get into? Everyone's already not happy about it. Least of all me. So, Iowa. Is anybody excited? Like, I'm not, man. Like, I love watching Missouri football. We only get 3 and I don't get to watch Missouri. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's probably why I'm not excited for it. I don't get to watch the game because I'll be at work. Caleb Johnson's not going to play for Iowa. A bunch of guys aren't playing for Missouri. Theo Weiss did say he's going to play, which is nice. Good for him. I love Theo. True son. But like, it's gotten to me, man. Like ESPN, and it's them. I like to crap on Fox, but like it's ESPN has made this where it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. These bowl games don't matter. Like Powers, if you wanted to, like last year, Ohio State can say they didn't care about the Cotton Bowl. You can't say Mizzou didn't care. Ohio State cared too. These bowl games now, if you're Mizzou and you're coming off a season where you had some were disappointing, it'll be cool to watch Brady Cook one more time as a Tiger. Some of these other guys, I don't know who's all announced they're going to play, who's not going to play. I know Chuck Hicks announced he's not going to play. And some random Mizzou fan crapped on him, which, Chuck Hicks wasn't good this year. So, like, why do you care? But he's like, I'm going to spend time with my family. He was like a 7th-year senior. Let me go hang out with my kids. It's like, all right, fair enough, man. Best of luck to you in life. Thanks for having a really nice 2023. He was very decent. Him and Newsom were saved Mizzou season when Bailey and Hopper kept getting hurt. So good on him. But you got Iowa. I think Brandon Sullivan's. I mean, Iowa's probably a little ticked that you took the quarterback they really wanted. I don't know if Bo was Mizzou's option one. Actually, clearly he wasn't. Miller Moss was option one. Iowa made Bo their option one. I know they already brought in Hank Brown, but which weird to me. Like Brandon Sullivan can play, man. Like why were they so after Bo? Like Brandon Sullivan can play. I didn't understand it. Oh, I'd like to win the game too. And part of this might just be I'm salty. I literally can't watch the game because I'll be working. But like it's just hard for me to be like, oh man, go play Iowa. Like you were supposed to play him a few years ago. You played him in 2010. I don't know. I mean, honestly, like, is anybody that surprised? Like Eli has not had a great run at quarterback here, but it's better than what Iowa's had in the last 5 years. is that surprising? Like, a kid wanted to play quarterback at Mizzou over Iowa. Like, Iowa, to be fair to Iowa, like, they averaged like 0.3 less points per game, 0.2 point less per game. Like, their offense wasn't awful this year. And Mizzou's, compared to expectations, Mizzou's offense was terrible. But, like, they still kind of have that rep, fairly or unfairly. We'll see what happens. I mean, they're not going to have their stud running back. Brendan Sullivan's going to play QB. And I like Brendan Sullivan. Like I said, I don't understand why they were so after a quarterback. That kid can play. And he's got some heart, man. He's got some moxie. Like, I like Brendan Sullivan. Just kind of is what it is. But Iowa, well, is it even worth giving a prediction? Like, it's hard to predict these kind of bowl games because, like it or not, guys, not everyone gives full effort in these bowl games. Not everyone gives full effort to being, like, locked in. It just happens. I mean, you know, I don't think in 2021 Mizzou was fully locked in for Army. And I don't think in 2022 Wake Forest was fully locked in for Mizzou. I mean, they still won the game. So we'll see what happens. I just can't get up for it. Man, I hope Mizzou wins. Like, another 10-win season would be cool. You win, you're probably looking at a top 20 finish, which would be really, really cool for this program. And you have to keep building. You don't become a national championship caliber program overnight. It takes time, and it's not linear. This year was a setback compared relative to expectations, but a setback being 10 wins is pretty good. So I think that's 40 minutes of Missouri talk. I want to get into something that I can't communicate well on Twitter. And I can't in various group checks I'm in and just talking. ESPN, the college football playoff. I have never been for it. I think it's stupid. And I hate using the word stupid. I think it's dumb. My point has always been there are not 12 teams that can win a national championship. There just isn't. And this year, Boise State cannot win the national championship. Arizona State can't win the national championship. Indiana, SMU, Clemson. That's 5 teams that no shot you're winning the national championship. You know, the next 7, like, you could have a discussion with me about who's going to win, who could win. Like, could Notre Dame win it? Sure. I mean, Notre Dame's got a path, man, and so does Penn State. And if you get to the national championship game, you have to play a good 60-minute game, but we've seen teams that are lesser get to the national championship game. I think Texas can win it. I think Oregon can win it. I think Georgia, even with a backup quarterback, can win it. Even though I'm less confident in that obviously I am in Oregon or Ohio State. But rarely, and this is a weird year. This is a very, like, Oregon's clearly the best team in the country right now. You know, we'll see what happens as we play actual games. Would Oregon have made the playoff? Is this Oregon team better than last year's Oregon team? Are they better than last year's Washington team? Maybe. Like, power rating wise, they're probably like an 8th. Like, they're like 2000. This team in 2019 doesn't come close to the playoff. I just think it's a weird year where there's a lot, as the talent spreads out more. We'll see. But even if you want to say, like, oh, there's 6 teams that can win the national championship this year. I don't know, man. Like, there's never been a year where you look at the 12th best team in the country and you're like, if they were only given a chance. And now we have to pretend they have a chance so that what's really going to happen, which is this is going to become the Big Ten, SEC, Invitational, and maybe just the SEC if ESPN gets their way. And we'll get into ESPN. I know I have the banner, but let me actually, I made these pre-show, but let me, as I start to rant and rave here, because this is something I just want to get on my chest. And I've had on the internet forever. No, not Iowa. Come on, save. So the complaining this week coming from Herb Street, the 4 team had blowouts. The Super Bowl has blowouts. Blowouts happen because sports are weird. College football national championship games have had blowouts. But no one should have been shocked in these games. Are you telling me Indiana, a pretty good team, Indiana's a pretty good football team, couldn't win at Notre Dame, who I think is an awesome football team, or that SMU, a good football team, couldn't go into Happy Valley and win? But ESPN this whole weekend, when I was younger, I wanted to be an ESPN broadcaster. And now I couldn't imagine being such a corporate, soulless shill. All weekend complaining about how Indiana made it over Alabama and Ole Miss and South Carolina. And Kirk Herbstreit's at the front of the line. Oh, man, these games suck. There's the Indiana schedule. Your network is the reason for these unbalanced schedules. Oh, we paid SEC all this money. We got to get back our investment. Let's push to have Texas and OU join. So now you have 16 teams and you only play 8. So there's going to be unbalanced schedules. And then you force the Big Ten's hand and they have to go get USC and Oregon and Washington and kill the Pac-12. No, it's extremely hard. It's hard to beat. It's hard to win on the road, and it's hard to beat an elite team on the road when you give them time to prepare and they're fully locked in. When they're fully locked in, it is hard to win against these teams, even on neutral sites. I know people don't like this excuse, and I'm about to hate on the SEC a little bit here, but there are a lot of bowl games like Bama's lost or Georgia's lost where you can't convince me they were all in on that game. And I could say the same thing for Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl last year. Mizzou fan, awesome win, super fun. Okay, it's not going to hurt my feelings. We still won. Florida State is an example last year. Half their team transferred. They did not care about that Sugar Bowl. They didn't care. Now, good on Georgia because they did. But it's hard to beat a locked-in elite team that has elite talent. Yeah, I can tell you right now, they didn't care about that OU game. They just blew a shot at a three-peat on the worst kind of loss we've ever seen in college football. That was the worst one, considering the stakes. And now they got to go play, I think that was a 10-2 OU team. Was it Trevor Knight? Yeah, it had to have been Trevor Knight. They didn't care about that game. No one could convince me they cared about that game. Same for the Utah game. Good on those teams for winning those games. They didn't care. It's hard to win against a locked-in team and a great team and on the road. And it's just great that it just got kicked back into ESPN's face, that Tennessee got mauled by Ohio State. Absolutely mauled. And Herb Street, the lunatic fringe who wanted to see Indiana and SMU. No, we're the college football fans. If you're watching me on this, you're a college football fanatic. You are the lunatic fringe. I grant that. But no, if it was up to ESPN and some of these losers, they're losers. If we had it their way, we'll look at the 247 preseason total talent composite, and we'll make that the playoff. Those 12 teams, you're in the playoff. Regular season doesn't matter. That's how we'll do it. Congratulations to Texas A&M. You finally made the playoff. The games matter. They have to matter. Oh, well, Alabama. Bama lost 2 games, and I did the Alabama channel for the Voice of College Football. Hop over there and go talk to Jackson. Jackson's the best. He's one of the best people on here. He's super smart. He's super knowledgeable. He knows what he's talking about. Awesome guy. Gotten to do a couple shows with him. Some of the most fun I've ever had talking college football. But you lost to 2 teams who would not have made a bowl game if they didn't beat you, in OU and Vanderbilt. Both those teams are 5-7 if you just simply win the game. Ole Miss. Yeah, man, that win over Georgia. The reason this was even a conversation was because of your wins over Georgia. Ole Miss, you scheduled nobody in the non-con. You played Wake Forest. Great. Man, I'm sure Winston-Salem was rocking when you were there. And you lost to Kentucky, who went 4-8. They were horrible. This isn't how sports work. It's just not. I hate doing this. But we have data points that we have to use. And in college football, we only get 13. SMU went into Louisville and won. Wasn't a convincing win, but they won the football game. Louisville went into Lexington, Kentucky, and won by like 5 scores. And you lost to that Kentucky team at home. And there's like Ole Miss people like, oh, well, we lost. We missed a late field goal. They shouldn't have been close. It shouldn't have been close. You should have killed them. They sucked. Kentucky was awful this year. They're so awful, they've gotten me off the Mark Stoops deserves a statue thing. Because for a couple years now, my point has been this is the best Kentucky will ever be is under Mark Stoops. You can never let him go because you probably fall back to being like a 4-win, 5-win program in this new SEC. And they were so bad this year, that got me off that. Ole Miss. You also lost to LSU. That didn't look that great because LSU kind of not good. 8-4, they really struggled in some games. And yet you lost to Florida. We lost by a touchdown. Jackson Dart threw 3 interceptions. Cool. A playoff team wins that game. Penn State wins that game. You don't get to complain about schedules when you had opportunities against bad football teams. Bad football teams. South Carolina. Look, man, I feel for Gamecock fans a little bit here because out of all 3 of them, they probably have the worst case. But their case, like they have a case. They kind of got robbed against LSU. I'm never a blame the refs guy. I think you're a giant wuss baby loser if you blame the refs. But every time. But there was a couple calls in that game that probably should have gone their way. And they might win if they had gone their way. They outplayed Bama in Tuscaloosa. They could have won that game, but they didn't. You didn't win the game, and then you got killed at home by Ole Miss. You got killed. So you weren't going to make it over Ole Miss. Like you can't lose by 3 scores at home and make it over the team that beat you by 3 scores at home. If the 2 teams are kind of fighting for it. And I feel for them because if they had just beaten. If they had beaten LSU at home, they're in it. They make it, and they had a big win at home against Missouri. I don't care what you all say; that was a big win for them. They treated it like it was a big win for them. Man, like these 3 fan bases, like you had your opportunities, you blew it. And in the case of Bama, Ole Miss, you didn't blow it because you lost to Georgia and other awesome football teams. You blew it because you lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. Oh, Oklahoma was like 26 in FPI. Great. They went 6-6. The games matter. Even the nerd people that I enjoy. I don't know if you guys listen to them. I love the Cover 3 podcast. I think they do an amazing job. I don't always agree with them, and some of them are a little more analytically inclined than I am. But the College Football Nerds are another podcast. I love listening to them talk football because I learn. I love learning. I don't know everything. Clearly, I'm pretty dumb. I love learning. But even they are like, the games have to matter. We only get 12 of these kicks, and if you don't make them matter, then what's the point? And we'll get it back to Mizzou. If they get one more stop at second, no, Mizzou had no chance. The South Carolina, like if Mizzou beats South Carolina, all of a sudden the South Carolina win. Like, okay, they still beat Clemson. No, they're still behind Bama. They're still behind Ole Miss. Like even at 10-2, they're still behind those teams. Like Mizzou blew their shot when they went in A&M and got killed. That's just kind of what happened. I mean, if they had lost that game, if they had beaten South Carolina and Mizzou had lost that game 31-20, 27-17, 30-20, like in that range, maybe like there'd be a conversation. But you got killed. You got freaking killed. And because you were never going to win in Tuscaloosa. More than likely, you were never going to win in Tuscaloosa. So I don't think that was a realistic thing. And then this playoff, the format's stupid. One of the podcast hosts pointed out, like, this format was made when you had a Pac-12, which who would have been the Pac-12 champ? Oregon. You had a Big 10, Big 12 that wasn't a glorified AAC. That's what the Big 12 is, guys. Like half the Big 12 teams were in the AAC. UCF, Cincinnati. Not half, but you know what I mean. It's just not a great conference. All these teams, it's a fun conference. Love that conference. Again, college football isn't all about the national championship. Like, it's a super fun conference to watch. But Arizona State probably, who had a great season, and I'm rooting for them against Texas, but they don't make it. Like, you probably have Bama. You also don't have these stupid super conferences. When this format was made, I wouldn't be shocked if they change it up a little bit. I just don't know how you make conference championships matter without giving them access to the buys. It's going to go to 14 in a couple years. Great. Now the 14th best team in the country gets a shot at a national championship. Great. All for inclusion, guys. Like this is why my point day one of this playoff was I think it's dumb because these teams that do not have a shot at winning a national title, Arizona State will not win a national title in college football. I know that sucks to say. They're just not. And instead of like a team like Mizzou last year, who will never win a national championship in football, unless things break their way, and maybe they do for Arizona State. They've got a good coach. They've got a conference that they can kind of run. The Big 12 is just asking somebody to seize it and become a powerhouse. But instead of rewarding a team like Arizona State or Indiana with, hey, here's a fun bowl game in Texas or Arizona, like you can play the football game and go party or party before the game. And you'll play Indiana and SMU or Indiana. I'm trying to think of who would have finished outside the top four. Indiana, Notre Dame on a neutral because Notre Dame didn't finish in the top four. Like, you could have had these fun times, but no, like, congratulations on your 11-1 season. You get to go to Happy Valley, and you're going to get smoked because if teams have more talent than you and they're locked in, they're probably going to beat you. And there's a decent chance when there's the talent gap there is between SMU and Penn State, and SMU's a good football team, you're going to get smoked. And I think Brett Lashley's a really good football coach. I think James Franklin's a damn good coach. And look what happened. You get smoked. Arizona State, we'll see what happens. They don't have to go anywhere. They get to play Texas on a neutral. I think this format's really dumb. But they're going to go to 14 and then probably 16 before you know it. But Zach, the FCS has 2014 playoff. Yeah, and the top 14, the teams in the semifinals were ranked 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the teams playing for the national championship were ranked 1 and 2. If your point to go to parity is the FCS, where North Dakota State's won like 9 of the last 15 national championships, yeah, you might as well have pointed to the mid-2010s NBA for your parity with the Warriors and the Cavs going back and forth. 14th best team. It's going to be the best Group of 5 champion. Yeah, they're going to do everything they can to push the Group of 5 champion down further and further. Now, this year was a weird year. Boise has a really good data point against Oregon. They didn't look great in a lot of their games down the stretch, but like you still played the number 1 team in the country to a field goal on the road. Like losses aren't impressive to me, but like that's about as close as you can get. And everyone else kind of stinks. And you have a glorified AAC in the Big 12 and the ACC, which stinks. I mean, the ACC is not very good either. So, like, in the ACC probably has 3 programs that can win a national championship. Big 12 has none. The ACC has 3: Miami, Clemson, Florida State. Yeah, I'd go 3. It's just goofy. This weekend drove me nuts. I lost a lot of respect for Kirk Herbstreit. I lost a lot of respect for Chris Fowler too, but we won't get too much into him. Dusty during the Texas, what's his face? He did a great job. It was just an awful announcing. Did a great article about just everything around ESPN this week. I was negative. Oh, this playoff stinks. Oh, the team stink. It's like, guys, I wish I could smack someone because like this is what your network wanted. I don't know how many of you follow college basketball. College football needs their version of John Rothstein or John Fanta, who one works for CBS, one works at Fox. Guys that just clearly love the sport, man, and just head over heels. It doesn't matter who the 2 teams are, man. They just want to talk and watch college basketball. College football needs that, and I think there are guys that could potentially be that, but they're just so dominated by ESPN, who seems to hate the sport now. And they don't. That ESPN doesn't like college basketball. We know that. They're playing G League games. There's like ranked college basketball games on. They're playing G League games. Whatever. But man, it was really disappointing and disheartening to hear a lot of the narrative from people who I used to really respect. Okay. Well, they are. I mean, SMU deserved to be in the playoff, but guys, the Big Ten, yeah. The Big Ten second place just played the ACC second place and killed them. Second place in the SEC played the ACC's best team. Like talent-wise, they're the best team. And yeah, Clemson got it within a touchdown, but like Texas was never going to lose that game. So yeah, the Big Ten's better than the ACC by a lot. The ACC is not as bad as the Big 12. Because at least the ACC has a few programs where it's like if Florida State, Miami, or Clemson have it going, they can win a national championship. No one in the Big 12 can win the national championship. They just can't. You have to recruit at a certain level. You have to have enough elite players, and none of those teams ever will. It's just not how the sport works. Because college football has never been about parity. It just hasn't. Like the same 18 teams have won this every. It's just ridiculous. Because the ACC, they don't care though. They don't care about the ACC. They have the rights to it, but they only care about ESPN. Very clearly cares about one conference. Sort of like how Fox has a lot of Big 12 rights, but they don't really care about the Big 12 unless it's Dion, which whatever, that gets talking points. And they had a great year, so fair enough, fair play, but no, Fox is not hyping up Arizona State. So no one at Fox, Joe Klatt's not going on Colin Cowherd being like, ooh, that Arizona State, Texas. Like watch out, Cam Scatabo and Sam Levitt. And it's unfortunate that Arizona State is missing Sam Tyson, but there's a chance there. No one's doing that. They don't care about the ACC. Sean McDonough, I think, is a good announcer, but man, like a lot of these guys this weekend just drove me up a wall. But I've been going for an hour. I love the games on campus, but you need to reward these teams for being higher ranked. But at the same time, you're never going to get some of these upsets. You're just not. Like Tennessee's a really good football team. And they went into the shoe, and Ohio State's a national championship caliber football team and got smoked. So Is what it is. I'm done ranting and raving. My throat's starting to hurt. I've been talking for an hour. So Mizzou gets their quarterback. We'll see what happens. I will not be here next week. If I am, it'll be a later show. I need to talk to Mark about that. So thank you guys all for being here. Yeah, I would. I mean, I'd like to see more networks get involved. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. ESPN's got a vice grip on this. Thank you guys all for being here. I am Zach with Missouri Live. We went an hour last week. I think we went like 30 minutes, but we actually had things to talk about this time. I hope you guys all have a great Christmas week. If you don't celebrate Christmas, have a happy holiday week. Enjoy the time off from work. Lord knows I will. If I don't see you, have a happy new year. And 2020, may 2025 bring you everything you need. So thank you guys all for watching. Mizzou's got its quarterback, MIZ. Now, we have a bowl game and then 8 months of what's the 2025 team going to look like?